Multitude, formerly known as Feratum, is moving toward being an agile organization. Part of the core way of working within the organization is aligned with the agile principles and values. And this short video is a brief introduction to Scrum, the agile way of working. We'll first look at how agile compares to the traditional way of working, then we'll introduce you to some of the key areas of Scrum. So, how does agile compare to the older, more traditional method called waterfall? Well, waterfall typically uses a lengthy planning process, which can take several months. This is followed by a building of the product, another few months, followed by testing and reviewing, all of which take more time. At the point you reach deploying the product, the technology or demand for what has been created may have changed since the original plan was developed all of those months back. There are other issues with this methodology. The planning stage must be completed before the build can start, and in some instances, the planning can start without a full understanding of what is needed. Once the build is done, often it is sent back to the planning stage as the build team haven't fully grasped what is required. This results in the project having to start again, and a blame culture begins to develop, resulting in false starts and/or rethinks. The same can happen in almost every stage of the process, which makes the process long and problematic. With Scrum and implementation of Agile, the process is broken into smaller pieces. First, just enough planning takes place to start the process. We build what is planned, and we test what has been built and review that element, giving us a potential shippable product. This process takes place within a 2-week time box and is repeated over and over again, each time doing just enough planning to meet an incremental release. And the result can be the creation of several incremental releases within a sprint. A sprint takes 2 weeks, and a release can take place at any point within that cycle. Within Agile Scrum, there are a number of key roles, but the 3 you need to be most familiar with are product owner, who defines what is needed for the company. He or she creates the task list. The Scrum Master is the servant leader to the team. He or she is responsible for serving and protecting the team during the process, overseeing the meetings and keeping things going. And the third is the Scrum team or squad itself, which is where each person sits. These teams are made up of between 5 and 10 staff members who are experts within their own field: marketing, IT, growth managers, etc. A good team should be aware of what each member does and be able to support and help on occasion. There are 3 predominant artifacts used within the Agile Scrum process. The backlog is simply the list created by the product owner of things to do, called user stories, from which the team prioritize their workload. This list changes regularly as tasks are completed and new ones agreed. The sprint backlog is the tasks themselves, selected by the team, called a squad, and agreed to include in the forthcoming sprint. A burn down chart shows the completion of the tasks in the backlog and should approach 0 as the work is being completed. There are 3 main ceremonies that make up Agile Scrum. Think of these as meetings or discussion sessions. Sprint planning is where the product owner, Scrum Master and squad meet to agree which stories are to be delivered in the forthcoming sprint. The daily Scrum or stand-up is where the squad meet at an agreed time to discuss what has been delivered, what they are currently delivering, and any issues or impediments they are facing. The sprint review and retrospective takes place during the sprint and at its conclusion. This is where the squad can demonstrate what has been achieved with the product owner and discuss possible developments and improvements before the next sprint planning meeting. So, if we bring it all together, we can take a look at the workflow within Agile Scrum. Starting with the product backlog, where the product owner breaks down the needs of the organization into user stories. The product owner, Scrum Master and squad meet for the sprint planning meeting. They discuss what the priorities are for the next sprint and agree on a manageable workload for the next 2-week sprint. The agreed priorities form the sprint backlog, tasks to be undertaken during the next sprint, and they are clear and understood by all parties. The sprint, a 2-week time box, is where the agreed tasks are met. During the sprint, daily stand-ups take place, so everyone is updated regularly, what has been done, what is being done, and any issues anyone has. The outcome of the sprint is a potentially shippable product. This can mean a number of things, but essentially relates to the completion of a particular task, which can be released as done, but still brought back if it needs to be reviewed. The squad then moves to the sprint review and retrospective. The sprint review is a sharing event where the squad sum up status, give feedback, and invite ideas and suggestions from others. The retro is the final part of the process, where the squad reflect on that process, focus on opportunities for improvement, identify inefficiencies, and assign actionable items. From the conclusion of the retro, the workflow is a simple repeat for each sprint. As mentioned at the top of this video, this is only a very brief introduction to Multitude's core way of working. Our transformation to this mindset started in 2020, and we currently have 20 plus squads in 2 groups or tribes called Feratum and Sweetbank. So, if you're not Agile, have some Agile experience, or have been using Agile since its inception in the early 2000s, how are we going to move forward?